Welcome to the Fireside Chronicles.
They say some people leave your life cleanly. But Marcus Hale was never one of those men. His story begins with Lena, the first wife, the woman who loved him long before any of the drama began. But what makes their story strange isn't the love or the divorce, it's the way Lena stayed connected. To his mother, to his friends, and eventually to every woman who came after her. Most ex-wives burn the bridge behind them. Lena? She kept the bridge swept, lit, and open, like she was waiting for someone to cross it. Even Marcus used to joke that Lena and his mother talked more to each other than they ever talked to him, but I don't think he ever wondered why. The truth is, Lena knew something about Marcus's past, something he didn't realize she knew. And that secret? It's the reason none of the women in his life ever really left his orbit. Some stories begin with love. This one begins with the woman who never truly walked away. Most people assume Tessa met Marcus first, but that's not how this part of the story goes. Tessa met Lena, the first wife, long before Marcus ever showed up. Strange, right? A woman meets the ex-wife before she meets the man? But Lena wasn't threatened. If anything, she encouraged it. She introduced Tessa to Marcus like she was offering him something she already understood. The two women formed a connection that didn't make sense to anyone watching from the outside. And if you had seen the way they looked at each other, comfortable, familiar, almost aligned, you'd start asking the same questions everyone else asked later. Why did Lena want Tessa close? Why did she trust her instantly? And why did Marcus's mother welcome Tessa into the family like she'd been expected all along? With Marcus, nothing was ever simple, but with the women around him, nothing was accidental either. If there's one person who never pretended in this story, it was Marcus's mother, Evelyn. People loved her, warm voice, soft hands, the kind of woman who seemed to hold a family together effortlessly. But beneath all that sweetness, Evelyn had a way of pulling people into her orbit, especially the women Marcus dated. She'd accidentally run into them at coffee shops. She'd reach out in moments that mattered. She'd befriend them before Marcus even knew she had their number. And every single one of them, Lena, Tessa, even the ones who came later, stayed connected to her long after the relationship ended. Most mothers lose touch with their sons' exes. Evelyn, she collected them. And as the circle grew tighter, the women began noticing something. Evelyn always knew more than she should. About them, about Marcus, about the past, none of them talked about. Some mothers meddle, Evelyn orchestrated. Celeste wasn't like the others, older, steadier, wealthy in a way that didn't need explaining. When she and Marcus were together, the relationship was quiet, almost too quiet. But when they ended things, her connection didn't end with him. She stayed close to Evelyn, and Lena, and even Tessa. It didn't matter that the relationships overlapped or tangled. Somehow, Celeste fit into the circle like she'd always been there. What made her different was the way she watched people, like she already knew how every story would play out. Some said she was manipulative. Some said she was dangerous, but the truth? Celeste wasn't the one pulling strings. She was the one who understood the strings better than anyone. And she knew something none of the others had fully realized yet. The circle around Marcus didn't form naturally. Someone built it. Rowan was different from all the others. Too young, too old, or too unpredictable depending on who was telling the story. She didn't fall into Marcus's life the way the rest of them did. She stumbled in, stayed longer than she meant to, and then tried to run. But even after she left him, she never escaped the women. They kept showing up, Lena checking in, Tessa asking questions, Celeste watching quietly from the background. And Evelyn, always Evelyn, welcoming her like she'd been part of the family for decades. Rowan didn't understand why until she discovered something she shouldn't have. something about Marcus and Lena's divorce, something Lena didn't know Rowan knew. And once Rowan learned the truth, she realized the thing every woman eventually learns. You don't date Marcus Hale. You get absorbed into the circle built around him, and the only way out is through the truth they're all protecting. The women begin talking to each other without Marcus. Lena, Tessa, Celeste, and Rowan meet for coffee. An odd, accidental, we just happen to be here situation orchestrated quietly by Evelyn. During this meeting, they realize something unsettling. They all remember Marcus differently. Same stories, different versions, different dates, different details. A man can be complicated, but contradictions this precise? That's something else. For the first time, they wonder, what exactly has Marcus been hiding? And why did none of them notice the gaps until they talked to one another?
Rowan opened the wrong drawer on the wrong day, or maybe the right one. Inside were pieces of Marcus none of them had ever seen. Letters, photos, documents, fragments of women who weren't in the room. But the real shock wasn't the drawer, it was Lena. She didn't panic, she didn't snatch it closed. She simply placed a hand on the wood and whispered, "You're not ready to understand what's in here." And Rowan heard the pain beneath it. Because Lena wasn't guarding Marcus. She was guarding the part of herself she lost trying to reach him. Every woman believed she'd been the closest to unlocking what lived inside his eyes. But Lena's drawer proved a different truth. Each of them held only a fraction. Each carried a piece. None ever found the whole.
It was the way Evelyn said Rowan's name, soft, trembling, almost afraid, that stopped her cold. Mothers don't look like that unless they know something you don't. And Evelyn Hale knew everything. She reached across the table, touched Rowan's hand, and whispered, "You need to stop digging." Not a suggestion, a warning, one wrapped in warmth and fear. When Rowan asked why, Evelyn didn't answer with words. She answered with her eyes. Eyes that had once seen the same darkness Rowan was chasing now. Celeste knew something was wrong the moment she heard his name spoken with fear. Not anger, not heartbreak. Fear. And it came from a woman who had no reason to lie. That was when Celeste realized if the other women were comparing memories, she needed to compare records. So she dug, quietly, relentlessly. And the deeper she went, the stranger everything became. Old coworkers paused when she asked about Marcus, not confused, but uncomfortable. Neighbors from his past shifted their eyes as if recalling something they wished they hadn't seen, and one woman, a brief ex he barely mentioned, hung up the second Celeste said his name. That's when Celeste pulled the employment records. Taxes, addresses, phone histories, the kind of details that can't lie the way people do. And her blood ran cold. There was an entire year missing from Marcus Hale's life. Not blank, not incorrect, missing, no employer, no bank activity, no address, no paper trail. A perfect void, a hole carved out of time. People don't erase a year by accident. Pain erases days. Trauma erases months. But a year is removed on purpose. And this wasn't the part that terrified her most. It was realizing that the missing year sat exactly at the moment every woman first saw that impossible, haunting depth in Marcus's eyes. That was the year something entered him, or something left him. Celeste closed her laptop with shaking hands, because suddenly the women's stories made sense. The longing, the obsession, the way each one felt they carried a different fragment of him. They weren't trying to unlock who Marcus was. They were trying to unlock what the missing year turned him into. And Celeste knew one thing with certainty. Whatever Marcus survived that year, he did not survive alone. Something else walked out of that year with him, and all of them had seen it, glimmering behind his eyes.
Lena didn't plan to confess. It fell out of her the way buried truth always does. Breathless, sharp, impossible to stop. "The affair was mine," she whispered, but it wasn't with a stranger. Every woman froze. Tessa swallowed hard. Rowan leaned forward slowly. Celeste's eyes narrowed. She could feel the shape of the truth before Lena spoke it. Lena wiped her palm against her jeans, voice cracking. It was with Marcus's best friend. A silence so heavy it felt like gravity itself shifted. She rushed to explain, tears burning at the edges of her voice. "It started as conversations. He was the one I called when I didn't understand Marcus, when the missing year and the empty explanations didn't make sense. I told Marcus I was asking his friend for support, for advice. That's how it began. Innocent. And then..." Her breath shook. "He understood me in ways Marcus never could. He saw how confused I was, how scared I was becoming." Tessa whispered, "His best friend? The one he never talks about?" Lena nodded. "Yes, because he disappeared after everything." She looked down, ashamed and haunted all at once. One day he looked at Marcus, just one look, and afterwards he told me something that chilled me to my bones. The women waited, breath held. He said, "There's something hollow behind Marcus's eyes, something that wasn't there before, something I don't ever want to see again." Tessa flinched. Rowan's eyes watered. Celeste went completely still. Lena continued, hands trembling. "He told me Marcus wasn't the same man he had known all his life, not since the year no one talks about. He told me I needed to choose myself, to leave, to get out while I still recognized myself." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "And then he cut off our contact. He said being close to Marcus, emotionally or otherwise, changes people. He wanted no part of it." Celeste exhaled sharply. "So Marcus's own best friend ran from him after seeing whatever he saw?" Lena nodded. "And Marcus never said his name again." The women felt it, a cold realization settling around them like nighttime fog. This wasn't just about a marriage breaking, or a betrayal, or even a missing year. This was about the one person who knew Marcus best. Looking into his eyes and walking away forever, Lena wiped her tears, voice trembling. "I didn't leave Marcus because of guilt. I left because I was terrified that whatever changed him would change me too." And in that moment, every woman realized something terrifying. It already had. Tessa didn't even finish her sentence. Everyone heard the fear in her voice. "I went back to Marcus, but he doesn't let me in anymore." The room snapped to attention. Lena froze. Rowan looked up fast. Celeste stopped breathing. Tessa's hands shook. It's like he's holding something inside himself together, and if he lets anyone close, it'll break. Rowan whispered, "That's exactly what it feels like living with him." But Celeste wasn't listening. She dropped a stack of papers onto the table. Records, timelines, the trail of the missing year. "There's something all of you need to see." The women leaned in as Celeste revealed the truth she'd been piecing together for days. Marcus didn't just change after the missing year. He came back with something missing and something else added. Lena's breath hitched. She whispered, "I felt that every day, like he was someone I almost recognized." And then the door creaked. Every head turned as Evelyn stepped into the room. Not startled, not angry, prepared. "You've all noticed it?" she said quietly. "The gap, the shift. The part of Marcus that never returned." Tessa's voice broke. "What is happening to him?" Evelyn looked at each woman with a mother's grief and a truth too heavy to carry alone. "You were all drawn to Marcus because each of you carries a piece of the person he used to be." Lena gasped. Rowan covered her mouth. Even Celeste, the rational one, went pale. Evelyn stepped closer. "He didn't choose you. Whatever followed him home from the missing year did." And in that moment, every woman felt it. They weren't trying to understand Marcus. They were trying to understand what was living inside the emptiness behind his eyes. The circle wasn't a coincidence, it was a warning. And it was almost too late. Rowan didn't scream when she read the message. She didn't have to. The look on her face said everything. Marcus was gone. No call. No explanation. Just gone. Tessa stood up first, shaking so hard she nearly dropped her keys. Lena whispered his name like it still belonged to her. And Celeste, calm, poised Celeste, suddenly looked like she might break in half. They got into the car without words, because some disappearances feel different. Some disappearances feel final. They found him behind the old church, knees pulled to his chest, trembling like a man who had run out of places to hide. Rowan rushed to him, voice cracking. "Marcus, what happened? Look at me!" He lifted his head, and every woman froze at once. His eyes weren't his eyes anymore. The depth, the longing, the impossible softness. The thing each woman swore she saw only in her moments with him, gone. Just gone. Tessa collapsed next to him, sobbing. "I knew it. I knew something was happening to him." Lena covered her mouth, tears blurring her vision. "I don't even recognize him. And he used to be the only person I ever knew." Celeste knelt down last, her voice steady but shaking underneath. "Marcus, talk to us. Tell us what's happening." But he couldn't, because whatever held him together all these years had finally snapped. Then Evelyn stepped into the light. No panic, no confusion, just a mother who had prepared for this moment long before it came. She whispered, "I knew this would happen. He can't hold the pieces anymore." Rowan turned sharply. "What pieces? Evelyn, tell us what you mean." Evelyn's voice trembled but didn't break. "When Marcus came back from that missing year, he wasn't whole. Each of you, Lena, Tessa, Celeste, Rowan, you became part of him. The parts he lost. The parts he couldn't carry." Lena stared at her. "You're saying we kept him alive?" Evelyn nodded. "You stabilized him, emotionally, spiritually. You weren't drawn to him because you loved him." Tessa's breath hitched. "That's why I felt him slipping away, even when I went back." Rowan sobbed. "That's why he feels like a stranger living in my house." Evelyn looked at them with a mother's devastation. "But now the pieces are slipping. He's losing all of you at once. And without you, he is becoming the man he was the day he came back from the missing year. A man emptied. A man none of them knew how to love." Marcus broke down, whispering, "I can't do this anymore. I can't be who you need." And that was the moment everything changed. Lena stepped back from him first. Then even Tessa, who had come back to him, desperate for the man she once saw inside his eyes. Rowan was the last one touching him, the last one holding on, the last piece still trying to stay. But the way he looked at her, lost, hollow, unreachable, she felt something break inside her too. One by one, the women stepped away, not because they stopped caring, but because staying would destroy them too. As Evelyn held Marcus, the women stood in the shadows. The ex-wife, the girlfriend, and the one he lived with now, all realizing the same painful truth. Marcus wasn't the center of the circle. He was the reason they all needed to leave it. And as they turned away, each walking into the night, the final cliffhanger hung in the air like a storm cloud. If the women were the ones holding Marcus together, then who will hold him now? But the fallout? The fallout is only beginning. Rowan didn't expect anyone at her door at sunrise, especially not a barefoot woman with calm eyes and a voice soft as breath. Sage, a stranger who looked like she'd stepped out of a yoga retreat and straight into Rowan's hallway. She whispered, "Marcus told me the circle would come for me." Rowan's heart dropped, because Marcus had vanished again, and this time it didn't feel random. It felt intentional. It felt afraid. Cut to Marcus, alone in a dim motel room, grounded. Breathing steady, hands trembling. He writes in his notebook, "Something is wrong, and I don't know who to trust." Back at the house, Sage walks inside, like she already belongs there. Her presence is unsettling. Too calm, too quiet, too observing. Celeste arrives and freezes the moment she sees her. that intuitive sense she never ignores. It fires instantly. Something about Sage is connected to the missing year. Then Tessa bursts in, already spiraling, already emotional, and Sage just watches her. Unmoved, unreadable. Tessa hates her immediately. Lena appears last, sunglasses on indoors, looking Sage up and down like she's a bad outfit. Marcus was with her? Sage smiles gently. I'm Sage. Celeste steps closer. Why are you here? Sage answers. Because Marcus isn't safe. And neither are you. Cut back to Marcus, staring at the motel wall. I don't remember her, he whispers. So why does she remember me? Season 2 begins with the truth. Sage didn't just show up. She was sent. By Marcus, or by something he couldn't outrun.
The child aligns with Marcus's spirit. Rowan freezes mid-hair flip, eyes narrowing like she just caught a rival sneaking onto her stage. Lena practically springs in front of Sage, thin lips pursed, beanie tugged low like a crooked little crown. As Marcus's wife, well, former wife, I should be closest to this situation. No one even glances at her. Sage sits unnervingly still, that serene yoga retreat tone floating out of her. I felt his energy choose me long before he left. Rowan laughs, sharp, gorgeous, venomous. Sweetheart, Marcus doesn't choose women, he survives them. Even Tessa rolls her eyes from the corner, muttering something under her breath. But she barely matters now. The air thickens. Lena adjusts her beanie again. Rowan's smile curls like she smells blood, and Sage calmly folds her hands over her stomach like she's holding a prophecy. Then Celeste steps forward, quiet, grounded, the only adult in the room. Before this turns into a circus, she says softly, Marcus needs to tell us what he remembers. The room goes still, because every woman knows, if Marcus remembers the truth, Sage's entire story might collapse in an instant. Sage's serene smile flickers just for a second, like her calm is starting to crack. The women waiting for Marcus like he's a storm about to hit the house. Rowan positions herself near the doorway, perfect angle, perfect lighting, determined to be the first face he sees. Lena sits tall, beanie pulled low, rehearsing lines in her head about being the real wife. Sage folds her hands over her stomach, breathing like she's communing with the universe. Tessa taps her foot impatiently, but she's barely part of the story now. The front door opens and Marcus steps inside, but he doesn't walk to Rowan or Lena or Sage. He goes straight to Celeste. The whole room freezes. Celeste's voice is calm. You said you remembered something. Marcus nods. There's a night I can't shake. I wasn't myself. I wasn't present. Sage's eyes widen. Lena stiffens. Rowan tilts her head, listening. Marcus continues. I remember someone beside me, but I don't remember choosing them. I don't remember wanting it. I barely remember being awake. Sage grips her stomach. Rowan's confidence fractures. Lena's smile drops. Celeste whispers, Marcus, who was in the room with you? His voice cracks. I don't know, but someone else was outside the door, watching. Tessa is pacing the living room, her voice rising with every step. I'm done pretending Marcus didn't love me, she snaps. He did, and everyone knows it. Rowan smirks, arms crossed. Relax, sweetheart, you were a rebound. Pretty, chaotic, and temporary. Tessa whirls around, her green eyes blazing. I was not temporary? Lena rolls her eyes. Marcus barely remembers you. You were right after me. Everyone rebounds after a divorce. Tessa screams. I was important. Sage doesn't even flinch. You were a season, not a destiny. That's the line that breaks her. Tessa points at all of them, shaking. You know what? I'm not doing this circus. I'm better than this, and I'm better than all of you. She grabs her bag, storms toward the door, but pauses long enough to look at Celeste. You'll see, he's not who you think he is. None of them are. Then she slams the door so hard the windows rattle. Rowan exhales dramatically. Lena adjusts her beanie. Sage folds her hands again, unbothered. Celeste just watches the door quietly. Marcus whispers from down the hall, "Was that Tessa?" Five women sat in one living room, and every single one of them believed she was the most important. Rowan sits on the arm of the couch, the beauty, the seductress, positioned to be seen from every angle. Lena sits primly in the center, hands folded like she's posing for a church directory, beanie pulled low, still clinging to her wife crown. Sage settles on the sofa edge, hands resting lightly on her stomach, her calm unnerving, like she already owns the future. Celeste stands near the doorway, quiet, grounded, completely unbothered. She isn't fighting for a throne, which is exactly why she has one. Evelyn enters, scanning the room, her gaze landing on Lena first, force of habit, but then drifting unwillingly towards Celeste. Because even Evelyn can feel the shift. The energy tilts further when Marcus walks in. Rowan straightens. Lena lifts her chin. Sage breathes deeper. Celeste stays still. And Marcus? His eyes go directly to Celeste. Just like that. The entire hierarchy is exposed. Rowan fights to be desired. Lena fights to be remembered. Sage fights to be chosen. Celeste doesn't fight at all, which is why she's the only one. Marcus keeps returning too. No one spoke, but every woman in that room was keeping score. Rowan, twisting a strand of blonde hair, thinks, "He'll remember us, our nights. He always wanted me the most." Lena, posture stiff, thinks, "I was the wife, the mother. I should outrank every woman in here." Sage, hands over her belly, thinks, "He needs softness, stability. He'll come back because the child chose him." Evelyn, watching them all, thinks, "Lena outranks them. But I wish Celeste had been the wife." Her gaze lands on Celeste, who sits calmly, quietly. She isn't competing. She isn't posing. She isn't afraid. And her inner voice is the simplest of all. "I just want Marcus to be okay." Marcus walks into the room, and every woman straightens, except Celeste, because she doesn't need to. In that moment, Marcus knew who he trusted, and who he never would again. "Marcus doesn't need therapy," Sage snapped. "He needs his root chakra aligned, and I'm the only one who can do it." "Tuh, please. A plain Jane, nothing remarkable, boyish elf woman? Marcus wouldn't even take pictures with you, let alone post you. And trust me, if anyone's aligning anything around here, it's not you." Episode 8 opens in silence. The door to the study opens. Marcus steps out first. Celeste follows, calm, unreadable, composed. Every woman looks up at once. Rowan scans Marcus's face, searching for reassurance. Lena narrows her eyes, already calculating. Sage watches Celeste instead. No one asks what was said. They don't need to. Rowan breaks first. "So," she says lightly, forcing a smile, "are we done pretending this is private?" Celeste doesn't answer. Sage laughs too loud. "I knew it," she says. "Secrets always surface." Marcus stiffens. "That conversation wasn't for you." Sage shrugs. "Well, it wasn't as private as you thought." The room shifts. Celeste turns slowly toward the door. "That noise?" she says quietly. "Someone was listening." Rowan's face flashes just for a second. Lena scoffs. "Oh, please, you're being dramatic." Marcus looks at his mother. Evelyn doesn't meet his eyes. The silence stretches. Then Sage snaps. "He doesn't need therapy," she blurts. "He needs his root chakra aligned, and I can help him do that." Rowan laughs sharply. "Tuh, please, a plain Jane, nothing remarkable woman, she smirks. Marcus wouldn't even post pictures with you. And if anyone's aligning anything around here, it's me. The room explodes. Marcus raises his voice. Enough! Everyone freezes. Celeste doesn't move. She's already done trusting. Episode 8 opens in silence. The door to the study opens. Marcus steps out first. Celeste follows, calm, unreadable, composed. Every woman looks up at once. Rowan scans Marcus's face, searching for reassurance. Lena narrows her eyes, already calculating. Sage watches Celeste instead. No one asks what was said. They don't need to. Rowan breaks first. So, she says lightly, forcing a smile, are we done pretending this is private? Celeste doesn't answer. Sage laughs too loud. I knew it, she says. Secrets always surface. Marcus stiffens. That conversation wasn't for you. Sage shrugs. Well, it wasn't as private as you thought. The room shifts. Celeste turns slowly toward the door. That noise? She says quietly. Someone was listening. Rowan's face flashes just for a second. Lena scoffs. Oh, please, you're being dramatic. Marcus looks at his mother. Evelyn doesn't meet his eyes. The silence stretches. Then Sage snaps. He doesn't need therapy, she blurts. He needs his root chakra aligned. And I can help him do that. Rowan laughs sharply. Tuh, please, a plain Jane, nothing remarkable woman, she smirks. Marcus wouldn't even post pictures with you. And if anyone's aligning anything around here, it's me. The room explodes. Marcus raises his voice. Enough! Everyone freezes. Celeste doesn't move. She's already done trusting.
Case closed.
Time to lift. Even the camper stopped rusting.
Careful, Bob.
But Bob had finally found courage, or stupidity. Sometimes they wear the same hat. I'm just saying. That dress has to be the most forgiving thing at this wedding.
No one sits the same way anymore. Richard clears his throat. Let's all calm down, he says quickly. This doesn't need to turn into... Evelyn cuts him off. No, she says sharply. It does. Marcus looks between them. For once, Evelyn continues, I want the truth. Richard sighs, deflecting. We can talk about this later. Everyone's emotional. Celeste notices it immediately. The way he avoids, redirects, intellectualizes. Marcus doesn't. You always do this, Marcus says. When things get uncomfortable, you change the subject. Richard bristles. I'm trying to be reasonable. Evelyn laughs, cold, humorless. Reasonable, she says. You stood by while my son was vulnerable. The room goes still. Sage lowers her gaze. Rowan watches, breath shallow. Lena says nothing, already storing this. Richard straightens, defensive now. You think I didn't notice something was wrong? You think I didn't know? Marcus's voice cracks. Then why didn't you stop it? Silence. Richard opens his mouth, then closes it. Evelyn turns to Marcus, decisive. I protected this family, she says. I did what I thought was right. Celeste hears it clearly now. Not love, control. Marcus steps back. No, he says quietly. You protected yourself. Evelyn's expression hardens. And for the first time, Marcus understands. Loyalty in this family has always come with conditions.
When Love stopped obeying her, Mara did not grieve like ordinary people. She strategized. Mara called Bob the small man with a big appetite, and Bob would smile, because Blob heard hope. He's missed word last. Then Mara would laugh and say, she called Bob her last hope, but not with tenderness, with the tone of a woman settling for the only man still standing in the smoke.
Marcus doesn't look at any of them. Not Rowan, not Sage, not Lena. He looks at the floor. I didn't disappear, he says quietly. I was hidden. The room stills. My memory didn't just fail. My body didn't just shut down. Celeste's voice is barely a whisper. Then what happened? Marcus exhales. There was something wrong with my brain, something they couldn't ignore anymore. He swallows. I needed surgery. I couldn't make decisions. I couldn't even tell what was real some days. Everyone is silent now. My mother didn't tell anyone. She said it was to protect me. Celeste's breath catches. She kept me in the basement. No visitors, no explanations, just recovery. Sage shifts, uneasy. Rowan stiffens. Lena doesn't speak. Marcus's voice tightens. I thought I vanished from my life. He finally looks up. But I didn't vanish. I was hidden.
When Love stopped obeying her, Mara did not grieve like ordinary people. She strategized. Well, Bob hasn't run yet. I've had husbands, fiancés, almost husbands, mistake husbands, and men who should have come with warning labels. She called Bob her last hope, but not with tenderness, with the tone of a woman settling for the only man still standing in the smoke.
I think there's something you should know. Sage doesn't look at Marcus when she says it. Her hands are folded, her voice steady, too steady. The pregnancy, it might not be yours. The room shifts. She explains it carefully, too carefully. There was someone else, a yoga instructor, someone she spent more time with than Marcus. With you, she says softly. It only happened once. Rowan stiffens. Lena doesn't hide her smile. Sage rushes to justify it. But Marcus loved my body. He always has. No one responds. Then she adds, barely above a whisper, I lost the baby. Silence. Not sympathy, not relief, just consequence. Marcus exhales slowly. I didn't choose you, he says. I was sick. I was vulnerable. Sage's voice cracks. I thought that would be enough. It wasn't.
When Love stopped obeying her, Mara did not grieve like ordinary people. She strategized. Calls it Mexican pastebake, she invented fusion cuisine. Mar thought dinner went control. She fed him like she wanted him full, slow, grateful, and slightly stand in the kitchen, cigarette glowing the stove, telling him he need to get healthier, while stirring a dish that could clog to drain by eye contact alone.
I know why I disappeared. The room freezes. Marcus doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't need to. My mother didn't just hide me. She controlled who knew the truth. Evelyn stiffens. You weren't stable, she snaps. I protected you. Marcus shakes his head. You protected the story. Silence. Then Lena speaks, too fast. I was just trying to help. Marcus turns to her. No, you shared my medical history online. You humiliated me. Evelyn's face changes. For the first time, she looks at Lena not as the wife, but as a liability. Rowan steps back. Sage says nothing. Marcus's phone lights up. Tessa. Celeste watches quietly. Marcus takes a breath. I'm done letting other people decide who I am. Evelyn opens her mouth. Marcus walks past her.
Just stir the damn meat.
Marcus didn't disappear all at once. At first, it was subtle enough to ignore. A message answered later than usual. A call returned hours after it was missed. An explanation that felt shorter than it used to. No one thought it meant anything. Marcus had always been steady, grounded, the kind of man people leaned on without asking whether he was strong enough to hold the weight. For years, he had been careful with his words, careful with expectations, careful not to disappoint. And for a long time, that carefulness looked like reliability. But reliability has a cost, and Marcus had been paying it quietly. Without realizing it, he became the center of something he never agreed to, a circle. It formed slowly, not out of love, but out of need. Lena was the first to feel it tighten. She had been the wife, the only one with a wedding album, the only one who believed history still carried authority. Lena told herself she understood Marcus better than anyone else. Because she had stayed, because she had endured. What she really understood was the version of Marcus who apologized too much. The man who smoothed over tension instead of naming it. The one who believed loyalty meant staying quiet. When that version disappeared, Lena didn't miss him. She felt replaced, and replacement was something she could not tolerate. Rowan noticed the shift next. Rowan didn't believe in permanence. She believed in presence. She measured worth by attention, by who was watching, who was wanting, who was choosing her in the moment. Marcus had made her feel singular, desired in a way that quieted something fragile inside her. When his attention wavered, Rowan didn't see distance. She saw competition, and competition demanded action. Tessa entered Marcus's life like a collision. Immediate, intense, overwhelming, she loved loudly, praised endlessly, made him feel powerful when he felt uncertain. The chemistry was addictive, chaotic, convincing. Marcus mistook intensity for intimacy until affection became demand and devotion turned volatile. When he pulled away, Tessa felt discarded. And when Tessa felt discarded, she made sure it was impossible to forget. Celeste arrived quietly, no spectacle, no performance. She listened. She believed people when they spoke. Assumed honesty was natural. Assumed manipulation was rare. It made her calm. It also made her vulnerable. Celeste noticed something fractured in Marcus long before anyone else named it, but she didn't push. She waited, and that patience unsettled him more than confrontation ever could, because Celeste didn't want a version of Marcus. She wanted him. Watching all of this, always watching, was Evelyn. Marcus's mother. Evelyn believed families survived through structure, through roles, through appearances. She valued order over emotion and loyalty over truth. To her, Lena was still the wife, still the mother, still the proof that Marcus's life had once looked correct. The other women were variables, disruptions she tolerated but never truly trusted. Richard, Marcus's father, preferred not to notice any of it. He believed intellect solved discomfort. That reason would eventually prevail. When tension surfaced, he redirected, changed the subject, trusted that cleverness could outrun consequences. Marcus stood in the middle of all of it, pulled by expectations he hadn't agreed to carry, interpreted by people who believed they understood him. Everyone thought they knew who Marcus was. No one asked if he knew himself. The silence grew heavier. Each woman filled it differently. Lena saw betrayal. Rowan saw competition. Tessa saw abandonment. Celeste saw warning signs. Evelyn saw a situation to manage. Richard saw a phase that would pass. Marcus felt something else. A pressure, a sense of being pulled in opposing directions, a growing awareness that no matter what he said, it would be heard as something else. And then one day he stopped trying to explain himself. The silence didn't resolve anything. It magnified everything. The circle tightened. No one realized yet that it wasn't forming around Marcus. It was forming because of him. Because unresolved needs don't disappear. They orbit, they wait, and eventually, they demand the truth.
She said every story belongs to someone. I laughed and made one up. Then the web appeared in the smoke. That one is mine.
Evelyn did not raise her voice. She never had to. She placed the wedding album on the table, slowly, deliberately, as if it were something sacred. The room went quiet. Lina sat a little straighter. Rowan stopped mid-sentence. Tessa's jaw tightened. Evelyn opened the album to a photograph she had shown too many times before. She looked at the others, not to remind them of history, but to remind them of their place in it. Even Celeste, composed as always, felt the message land. You are visitors in a life that was already decided. Evelyn watched the discomfort spread, and she enjoyed it, not the order, the reaction. She knew Lena was not remarkable, not a good wife, not a devoted mother, not especially intelligent, not especially beautiful. But Lena was useful, because when Evelyn elevated her, when she placed her on a pedestal, no one else could touch. She got to watch other women shrink. She liked that. She liked knowing that no matter how capable, how composed, or how loved another woman was, none of them would ever outrank a title that had never been earned. And if Marcus suffered beneath that structure, so be it. Evelyn would rather be right than kind. Richard shifted in his chair. He hated moments like this. He couldn't stand Lena. He had never respected the marriage. He had known from the beginning that it was wrong. But when tension surfaced, Richard did what he always did. He deflected. Well, he said mildly, let's not get lost in the past. Marcus should be focusing on himself anyway. His career, his future, none of this helps him. Evelyn did not respond. She didn't need to. Richard never challenged her narrative. The silence that followed Marcus did not break. It thickened. What had once been distance became interpretation, and interpretation became story. Each woman began explaining Marcus in the way that made her feel least powerless, and each version was wrong. Lena told herself the silence meant betrayal, but it wasn't loyalty that made her angry. To hold power without responsibility. With Marcus, Lena never had to carry the weight. He paid the bills, handled the logistics, took responsibility for the endless adult decisions she avoided without even naming. Lena kept her freedom, and Lena believed she was intelligent, strategic, smarter than everyone else in the room, but what Lena actually understood wasn't people. It was leverage. She knew how to occupy the role of the wife without ever earning it. So when Marcus withdrew, but what she was really afraid of was becoming invisible. Rowan didn't just want Marcus. She fixated on him. Rowan was the kind of woman who could command attention without asking, who knew how to hold a gaze, who understood how desire moved in a room. Male attention wasn't a bonus, it was oxygen. When men noticed her, she felt real. When they didn't, she felt erased. And Marcus had been her favorite mirror. So when his attention faded, Rowan didn't ask what was wrong. She asked who had taken her place. She redirected every conversation back to him, watched her phone as if it might explain everything, adjusted her presence the way she always did when she felt threatened. Rowan didn't grieve Marcus, she strategized around him. Because losing Marcus didn't just mean losing a man. It meant losing the version of herself that felt most powerful. Tessa didn't interpret Marcus's silence as distance. She interpreted it as rejection. She had been the first woman after Lena, not because she was right for him, but because she arrived. When Marcus was emotionally stripped down. Before anything physical, there had been conversations, late nights, messages that felt charged, a feeling of being seen that he hadn't felt in years. Marcus hadn't crossed the final line while still married, but his heart had already begun to leave a structure that no longer held him. After the divorce papers were filed, the relationship became physical, fast, intense, unstable. Marcus mistook intensity for intimacy. Tessa mistook intensity for permanence. And no one confuses those two things more than someone terrified of being left. Through all of it, Evelyn watched. She did not interpret the silence emotionally. She interpreted it hierarchically. She reminded every woman, again and again, that Lena was the wife. That history had already been written, that no one else would ever outrank what had once existed. She did it openly to humiliate. There were children, there were appearances, there was the version of life that looked correct from the outside. So when the marriage collapsed exactly the way she had feared, Evelyn did not say, "I was wrong." She said, "You were foolish." Every time she brought out the wedding album, every time she elevated Lena in front of the other women, she was doing more than protecting a title. She was reminding Marcus, "I warned you, you didn't listen, and now you live inside the consequences." If the women were disturbed, she enjoyed it. If Marcus suffered, she accepted it, because being right mattered more than being kind. Richard saw what was happening. He just refused to stop it. He hated Lena. He disliked the hierarchy. He knew the marriage had been a mistake. But confrontation was never his instinct. Instead, he told Marcus the same thing over and over. Focus on yourself, on your career, on what actually lasts. Stop chasing women. Stop explaining yourself. Stop letting emotional chaos define you. Richard believed ambition could fix what relationships complicated. He didn't see that silence doesn't heal anything, it sharpens it. And Marcus stood in the center of it all, interpreted, measured, claimed, Everyone wanted something from him: validation, control, an apology, a narrative that made them feel secure. No one wanted to ask the question that mattered. Are you okay? So Marcus did what men like Marcus do when the room becomes too loud. He gave less access, less explanation, less of himself. And the circle, sensing the loss, tightened. Because when a man stops speaking, people stop hearing him.
Your turn. You ever notice how some moves look stronger than they are? Only if you overthink it. Why would you go there? Positioning.
Marcus did not announce his withdrawal. He simply stopped participating. He answered fewer messages and returned calls later. Let conversations end without rescuing them. To Marcus, it felt like survival. To everyone else, it felt like rejection. And rejection always demands explanation. Lena noticed first. Not because she missed Marcus, but because the silence disrupted her access. She was used to reaching him when she wanted, for validation, for reassurance, for leverage. Now, her messages sat unread. Her calls went unanswered. And for the first time, Lena felt something unfamiliar. Not heartbreak, but loss of control. She told herself she was calm, above it, smarter than this. But she wasn't. Because Marcus had always been the structure beneath her life, and structures are only invisible until they begin to collapse. Rowan felt the shift more viscerally. Marcus's silence didn't just wound her, it erased her. She replayed every moment she had spent with him, every glance, every laugh, every night that had felt charged with meaning. She convinced herself it had been real, that she had been special, that she had mattered. So when Marcus stopped responding, Rowan didn't assume distance. She needed the story to stay alive, because if Marcus no longer wanted her, then who was she? Tessa experienced the silence differently. What began as emotional closeness had quickly turned physical after the divorce was filed. It had burned fast, intense, addictive, and then it collapsed. Marcus had pulled away the moment intensity demanded permanence. Tessa oscillated between devotion and fury. Long messages, missed calls, apologies followed by accusations. Marcus didn't respond. Not because he didn't care, but because he recognized the pattern too late. And he was done being consumed. Watching all of this unfold, Evelyn applied pressure exactly where it hurt most. She reminded everyone, constantly, that Lena was still the wife. She brought out the wedding album again, let it sit on the table like a verdict. She referred to Lena with reverence she had never shown during the marriage. This, she said once, tapping the page, was real. The implication was clear. Everything else was temporary. Rowan felt humiliated. Tessa felt erased. Evelyn watched their discomfort with quiet satisfaction. She enjoyed the way the room shifted, the way other women shrank beneath a title that no longer existed, but still held power. Lena noticed. And for the first time since Marcus pulled away, she felt steady again, because Evelyn was still choosing her, still protecting her position, still giving her something to stand on, even if that something was built on resentment. Richard saw what was happening. He always did, but he never intervened. Instead, he redirected. "This isn't helping you," he told Marcus quietly one night. "You need to focus on yourself, on your career, on what actually lasts." He meant well, but avoidance is not neutrality. And by refusing to challenge Evelyn, Richard allowed her narrative to harden. Marcus felt the weight of all of it. The expectations, the interpretations, the silent demands. He felt like every version of himself was being pulled apart. Everyone wanted something. No one wanted the truth. So Marcus retreated further. He didn't explain, didn't correct assumptions, didn't defend himself. And in that vacuum, alliances began to form. Rowan reached out to Lena first, not with vulnerability, with recognition. They were two women who felt displaced by the same man, even if their reasons were different. Lena responded immediately. She understood power when she saw it. She offered Rowan something Marcus never had: access, belonging, a shared grievance. They spent time together that blurred boundaries, late nights, private conversations, spaces where rules softened and attention multiplied. Sometimes there were others around, men who admired them, voices that reminded them they were still wanted. Neither woman ever described those nights the same way, but both carried the after effect, a closeness that wasn't innocent. A bond built not on healing, but on reclamation. Rowan didn't just lose Marcus, she found Lena. And Lena didn't just gain an ally, she gained another way to stay relevant. Marcus sensed the shift, the tightening of the circle, the way silence had stopped being empty and started being filled by other people's agendas. He didn't know yet what it would cost him, only that something was moving without his consent, and that whatever came next would not be quiet. Marcus didn't announce that he was pulling away. He didn't slam doors or deliver speeches. He simply stopped participating. He answered fewer messages and returned calls later, let conversations end without rescuing them. To Marcus, it felt like survival. To everyone else, it felt like rejection. And rejection always demands an explanation. Lena noticed first, not because she missed him, but because his silence disrupted her access. Lena had grown accustomed to reaching Marcus whenever she wanted, not out of love, but entitlement. She had never been the kind of woman who carried the weight of responsibility. Marcus had always been the one who handled the bills, the logistics, and the difficult conversations, the parenting decisions, and the invisible labor of adulthood. And Lena had stayed because she didn't have to grow up. She could go out with friends, disappear for hours, live as if unattached while still holding the title of wife. She wasn't loyal, she wasn't nurturing, but she was comfortable. And comfort for Lena mattered more than commitment. So when Marcus stopped responding, it wasn't heartbreak she felt. It was the loss of control, and Lena hated that more than anything. Rowan felt the shift differently. Marcus's silence didn't just wound her, it erased her. Rowan was the kind of woman who knew how to be seen. She had sex appeal like a language. She understood attention and could pull a gaze without even trying. But underneath it, Rowan was hungry for reassurance, validation, and the feeling that she was chosen above everyone else. Marcus had once given her that. He had looked at her like she was singular, and Rowan had built an entire obsession on that look. So when his attention faded, Rowan didn't assume distance, she assumed replacement. She watched her phone like it could explain her worth. She brought Marcus into every conversation. She posted more, smiled louder, and flirted harder. Because if men wanted her, then Marcus would remember. That was always her logic. But Marcus never responded to jealousy. He responded to peace. And Rowan didn't know how to be peaceful. Tessa had been different. Tessa hadn't entered Marcus's life with seduction. She had entered with intensity. She was the first woman after Lena, the rebound that felt like oxygen. At first, it had been emotional, late-night conversations and charged honesty, the kind of connection Marcus hadn't felt in years. Then, after the divorce papers were filed, it became physical, fast, and addictive. The kind of chemistry people mistake for fate. Marcus thought it meant something. Tessa thought it meant everything. But Tessa was unstable in the way fire is unstable. Beautiful, consuming, and impossible to hold. One day she adored him. The next, she punished him for not loving her correctly. And Marcus had boundaries like walls. Once something crossed them, he didn't negotiate, he disappeared. So Tessa became a ghost in his phone. Voicemails, long messages, silence followed by rage. And Marcus never answered, not because he didn't feel it, but because he knew where it led. At the center of all of it, Evelyn watched. And Evelyn did what she always did. She controlled the room without raising her voice. She brought out the wedding album again, placed it on the table slowly, like scripture. Rowan stopped breathing. Tessa's face tightened. Even Lena sat up straighter. Evelyn opened to a photograph she had shown too many times before. "There," she said lightly, "the only woman who ever truly mattered." She didn't look at Marcus. She looked at the others, not to remind them of history, but to remind them of their place. Evelyn loved the discomfort. Not because Lena was special. Lena wasn't. Lena wasn't brilliant, wasn't loyal, and wasn't even particularly admirable. But Lena had held the title. And Evelyn worshipped titles, even when she despised the person wearing them. Sometimes Evelyn rubbed Lena in everyone's face, not because she respected Lena, but because she wanted Marcus to suffer. A quiet punishment, a lifelong reminder. You married wrong, and now you live inside it. Evelyn would rather be right than kind, even if it destroyed her son. Richard shifted in his chair. He hated moments like this. He couldn't stand Lena. He never respected the marriage. He had known from the beginning that Marcus was chasing structure, not love. But Richard did what he always did. He deflected. "Well," he said mildly, "let's not get lost in the past. Marcus needs to focus on himself, his career, and his future. None of this helps him." Evelyn didn't respond. She didn't need to. Richard never challenged her narrative. He simply stepped around it. And avoidance is not neutrality, it is permission. Marcus stood in the center of it all. Interpreted, measured, claimed. Every woman wanted something from him. Lena wanted status. Rowan wanted obsession returned. Tessa wanted intensity revived. Evelyn wanted control. Richard wanted escape into ambition. And no one wanted to ask the only question that mattered. "Are you okay?" So Marcus did what men like Marcus do when the room becomes too loud. He gave less. Less access, less explanation, less of himself. And the circle sensed the loss. Tightened. Because when a man stops speaking, people don't hear him, they hear themselves. And in that silence, something shifted. Rowan reached out to Lena, not with comfort, but with recognition. Two women displaced by the same man for different reasons. Lena responded immediately. Because Lena understood power. She offered Rowan something Marcus never would. Access, belonging, a shared grievance. Late nights followed, private conversations, spaces where boundaries softened. Sometimes there were others around. Sometimes there weren't. Neither woman ever described those nights the same way. But both carried the after effect. A closeness that wasn't innocent. A bond built not on healing, but on reclamation. Rowan didn't just lose Marcus, she found Lena. And Lena didn't just gain an ally. She gained another way to stay relevant. Marcus sensed it. The tightening, the shifting, the circle moving without his consent. He didn't know yet what it would cost him. Only that something was forming, and it would not stay quiet. Not for long. By the time Celeste entered Marcus's life, he had already learned how to be watched. Watched by women who wanted answers. Watched by women who wanted access. Watched by women who wanted to feel chosen. Marcus had become used to being interpreted. What he wasn't used to was being left alone. That's how it started. Not with a spark, not with tension, not with a moment that could be replayed and analyzed. With quiet. Marcus met Celeste in a place where nothing was being negotiated. No one was competing, no one was performing, no one was measuring proximity to him like status. Celeste didn't arrive like the others had. She didn't scan the room, didn't search for attention, didn't test his interest. She simply spoke to him like a person who already had a full life. And that alone made Marcus pause. Celeste didn't ask about Lena. She didn't ask about Rowan, didn't ask about Tessa, didn't ask why Marcus had grown distant from everyone at once. She asked simple things. How's your sleep lately? Are you eating regularly? Do you want conversation or do you want quiet? Marcus didn't know how to answer at first, because no one had offered him that choice before. Most people assumed, Celeste observed. Marcus found himself speaking without being pulled. Not explaining, not defending, not clarifying his history, just talking. And when he stopped talking, Celeste didn't fill the silence. She let it sit. She let him sit. That was new. Elsewhere, the absence of Marcus was still being felt. Rowan noticed first. Not because Marcus told her anything, he didn't, but because the energy shifted. He was less reactive, less available, less concerned with who was watching. Rowan checked her phone more often, posted more deliberately, adjusted her presence in every room. She believed attention could restore access. It always had before. Lena sensed something too. Marcus hadn't said a word to her, but Lena was fluent in power dynamics. She knew when a man's center of gravity moved, and Marcus's had. He responded less, explained less, offered less. Lena told herself she didn't care, but she did, because Marcus had always been structure. He handled responsibility, bills, logistics, the invisible work of adulthood. Lena had stayed in his orbit because it made life easier, not because she loved him, because she didn't have to carry anything heavy. And if Marcus found someone who required nothing from him, that meant Lena would no longer be necessary. That made her uneasy. Evelyn felt the shift in a different way. She couldn't see Celeste yet, but she felt Marcus becoming less influenced by the hierarchy she maintained. He didn't react as strongly when she mentioned Lena, didn't engage when she compared women, didn't defend himself the way he once had. That bothered her, because Evelyn preferred a son she could correct, not one who had grown quiet. Richard noticed Marcus breathing easier. That's what stood out. Not excitement, not infatuation, relief. "This one seems calm," Richard said once carefully. Evelyn didn't respond. She wasn't ready to consider what calm meant. Back with Marcus and Celeste. There was no declaration, no moment where either of them named what was happening. They simply kept meeting, kept talking, kept existing in a space where nothing was demanded. Marcus found himself saying things without realizing he was saying them. "I feel like everyone wants something from me," he admitted once. Celeste didn't rush to reassure him. She didn't romanticize the confession. She simply nodded. "Most people do," she said gently. "I don't." Marcus studied her face. There was no performance there, no calculation, just steadiness. What Celeste didn't know was that she was already altering the structure around him, because Marcus wasn't reacting the way he used to. He wasn't chasing validation, wasn't managing other people's emotions, wasn't explaining himself. He was resting. And when a man who has always been reactive becomes still, the people around him start to notice. Rowan felt it like a drop in temperature. Lena felt it like a shift in leverage. Evelyn felt it like a loss of control. None of them knew Celeste yet, but they felt her. Because Celeste didn't enter Marcus's life like a competitor. She entered like peace. And peace is disruptive to people who rely on chaos. Marcus didn't call it love. He didn't call it anything. He just noticed that when he sat across from Celeste, he didn't feel watched. He didn't feel measured. He didn't feel like a role he had to play. For the first time in a long while, he felt like himself. And that was enough to change everything, even if no one else knew it yet.
Welcome to the Fireside Chronicles.